Hey, everybody, welcome to Hear Us Out. I am Patrick,
And I'm Paul. And
and we're Hear Us Out, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We have a few new subscribers this week, and I know one of our loyal Twitter followers directed some friends here, so thank you very much for that, Brew. And thanks to anybody new who's joining us tonight or checking this out at a future time.
yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, I checked the subscription thing before we left or before we joined, and I was just like it was like
New
three new
people.
people have joined.
Yeah.
New people joined since I checked it last. But anyway, tonight we're going to be talking about something exciting, because we're going to be talking about suspension of disbelief or the willing suspension of disbelief. This is an easy concept, which is to explain quickly, but going into the nuances and everything like that's where it goes difficult. And when you start thinking about it, it's kind of like thinking about certain elements of life, and then they just get stuck in your head and they rattle around there for quite a while. Um,
It can
so
get overwhelming quick. If we try and go too deep, you'll all know because both Paul and I will be pausing at length and going, yeah, I don't think we can go into that. But yeah, like Paul says, it's simple concept, but it's fun because the idea of any entertainment or hearing any story, suspension of disbelief, the idea has been around since the dawn of time. To a lot of people, they think it's just them, but it's actually on the creator, writer, storyteller side as well. So it's a two-way street. You have to tell or create your story in a way that people are going to be able to willingly suspend their disbelief. Um, Paul, movies have been doing it since the start of time.
yeah, like that's the thing. Like any like well, going back to the story to storytelling, which is just basic storytelling. It's a very important part. It's essentially the gateway towards accepting any kind of world, any kind of story or anything like that. So let's get into the we'll get into the simple concept first, which is the suspension of or the willing suspension of disbelief is essentially you knowing that you're watching a film, but accepting the sign of the realization that you're that within the world you're not watching a film.
Yeah,
So it's essentially the accepting of what you're seeing in the movie or TV is real life according to what's on screen,
yeah.
kind of thing. That's the kind of basic concept.
You're going with it, as I always put it. You're going with what you're being shown. You're getting into the story. And like you say, start of time, storytelling, which, that's a fairly straightforward concept. But what a lot of people don't realize is it applies to all entertainment media or mediums. Um, Comedy being maybe the one that people don't realize that they're actually willingly suspending their disbelief mid gag or mid joke. Like, I'm not going to tell the whole joke, but jokes about, a guy breaking down in his car and it's the middle of the night and then he hears a voice telling him how to fix the car, turns right and sees it's a big white horse. The horse was right, the guy fixed the car, drives down the road, is talking to somebody going, you won't believe what happened. I actually broke down the road from here, and then a big white horse told me how to fix my car. And the guy goes, wow, that's amazing. I didn't know that horse knew anything about fixing cars. You're all the way to the punchline before you're questioning about talking horses, because it's part of the bit. You're buying into the story. Same thing for music, same thing for anything that's trying to convey or get you to come along with a story that isn't 100% reportage, that is just factual. And even documentary does it, Paul, to be fair. You will need
Yeah.
to go with a certain narrative line in documentary sometimes.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like no matter what storytelling is that's or story that's being told, which is there is elements of which is suspension of disbelief, trickery. There, it's the only way that you can accept, like for the most simple, basic things like law and order, that you are going to be the fly in the wall of like all these people being cops and lawyers and that kind of thing. And that's a part of suspension of disbelief. The trick there is that it's a little familiar to you, so it's a little bit easier to take, um, kind of thing. So that's just one trick, which goes. So yeah, the idea is that suspension of disbelief allows us into the world of movies or entertainment in lots of ways. It opens the doorways to stories being fantastical, science fiction, realistic, warbound, anything like that. Without this, it also will be harder for you to watch a film. Like the reason why the great films are called great is because of this willing of suspension of disbelief is done really well. And this thing also goes through every facet of a movie or of a storyteller, like down to the way that the actors are, the way that the story's been told, the way the shots are all being done, lighting, sound, everything, all concepts of this are gathered together to make this. It's like the underlying thread throughout the movie that helps you out.
Yeah, and weirdly, Paul, and this is going to sound almost negative, there is the art of movie making, the art of storytelling in general, is actually making the untrue plausible. And think of the start of time when it comes to film. It was black and white with no sound. The ultimate suspension of disbelief that we've all been getting in on, and everybody always thinks, well, you have to go in and accept that they're actors. You know that they're not really the person. Well, you also have to buy the entire world. You have to get on board with, yeah, okay, I'm looking around and I see color, but this thing up there is black and white. You can get over that quickly without any great big storytelling mechanisms or tricks to bring you in, because it's wow, it's moving pictures. Same thing when sound finally showed up. People were like, I missed the piano, but wow, it's sound.
Yeah.
The level of nuance that happens now, with as sophisticated as everybody likes to believe they are, including ourselves. I am so not sophisticated. I eat with my hands. I don't even have a fork. If you want to try and trick, as some people would think, people into buying into the most fantastical scenario, it's just a matter of art. Unfortunately, that skill can be used for evil as much as it can be used for good. And I'm not even going to get into the whole news and politics end of making untrue things plausible and therefore unwittingly getting people to actually suspend their cognitive senses and live in a little bit of disbelief. But it's a huge part of when you say a film was good, or I really liked that movie, you may not realize that the one thing it did better than anything else was not make you question its very existence. You'll start critiquing certain things about it, but you'll have been in it. You'll have gone with it to the point of enjoying the art that was being fired at you. Same thing with music in a lot of cases.
Yeah, like if you're questioning certain elements of the movie that you just like, oh, I don't think that person, like I don't think that person would do that, kind of thing. Like you're already stuck there. Like you're
Yeah.
already in the suspension of disbelief zone, essentially, when you're just like one of the biggest pet peeves I have is certain films in which they are based off of a simple, stupid concept, and that's where the thread goes. And you're just like, you just when you buy that stupid, simple concept, and then you go through the thing, and then later on you're thinking about it, going like, wait a minute, I none of that would have happened, kind of thing. It's just like, well done, movie. You've tricked me into buying your bit,
Yeah.
which is going back to the comedy kind of like element. Buying the bit is the first hurdle,
Yeah.
and movies do this in a lot of different ways. I
And
think,
bad movies don't do it, or do it really well until they don't, that's the other
yeah,
tough thing in the movie business. You can't be 99% good at keeping people on board, because if once they go overboard, getting them back is nearly impossible sometimes.
yeah, like the phrase "being taken out of the movie"
Exactly.
is that it's yeah, you have to be a great movie, you have to be 100% like consistent with the suspension of disbelief, like, because you can't in the middle, because anywhere along that line, if you get taken out of the movie, then it's very hard to either get back in, but you'll always remember the fact that, like, oh, that part, they really took me out of it.
Yeah.
Like, it made me realize I was watching a movie rather than in Star Wars, kind of thing.
Can I, just before we move on to kind of the how it gets done, can we just deal with some prejudice up front? Because
Hmm.
that's what's behind an awful lot of people's. When someone says I don't like X or I don't like Y, or I can't buy into that, or I can't believe it. For me, for years it was costume dramas. Downton Abbey changed all that. One good movie night, huh? All it takes is one good cinema trip, folks. But the point I'm about to make will resonate with everybody. That they'll go, oh well, that's too far fetched. I can't buy into space movies. Space. That's none of that. Aliens aren't real. It's like, okay, but how did you feel about, I don't know, zombie movies? Oh yeah, I'm fine with zombie movies. Well, zombies aren't real either. oh yeah, but but at least that's happening here on Earth. It's like, well, location, 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 folks. Sometimes it's a predisposition to not like something, or it can be anything from complex embarrassment about not knowing something about a subject or whatever. But I spent an awful lot of my youth with people who would go, I can't watch that, it's too far fetched. And I'm like, okay, you'll watch a western where 15 bullets get shot. None of them hit their target except the one guy who was shooting at a bottle top 50 million miles away and hits it. But you have a problem with the idea that there's a cowboy in space. So I've just thrown up two pictures. One is a famous space cowboy, Han Solo and his friends in Star Wars. The other is a now famous zombie cowboy in Walking Dead. You know, both of those are stories about people running around shooting guns a little bit. They've got some crossovers, they haven't got other crossovers. Neither of them are real. Neither of them are really any more plausible than the other overall. You can pick a certain metric and go, well, I can go to the forest where they filmed that. I can't go to the forest of Endor. At which point I'll say, you can, I've been, it's gorgeous. It's just not called Endor. And it's a really, really nice place if you ever get to go. Where they shot that stuff is incredible. That's one of the things that we kind of have to clear the board. Some people are going to go, well, I can go with it except when it's X, except if it's set in medieval times, or if there's ghosts, or if it's a costume drama, or if people stop and start singing in the middle of it, which is one of my classic things. Musicals are fine for me. I've just never liked something where all the dialogue is sung, or at least rarely. So we've all got our own inner prejudice. That's not really suspension of disbelief's fault. That's not the filmmaker's fault. You brought that in with you before the reels started showing the movie.
Yeah, which leads on to the one of the things that I wanted to suggest before the tricks of the trade and stuff is there actually is two versions of the suspension of disbelief. There's the willing suspension of the disbelief, which is, as Patrick said prior to us starting, it's a little bit of a kind of misnaming of the thing. Your brain is doing something essentially that it's like your subconscious is essentially going, yeah, we're accepting this as real life, but we know it's a movie, but I'm going to keep that behind the curtain until the film ends. And then there's the other time, which is actually which should be called the willing of suspension of disbelief. It's when you actively watch a film and you get to a point where you're just accepting what's going on, as in you've actively gone, I don't think these things would happen, but I'm going to continue to watch the movie as if they are, kind of thing. Which is the two forms. As we said before, the second one is definitely the worst version of a movie doing its job, because you are essentially meeting it halfway, which is not how it should work. You shouldn't be knowing that you're meeting it halfway. Like your brain should be just like, no, don't curtain, it's fine. It's grand.
And actually, in about 5 minutes, I'm going to have one good exception to that rule, where there is one method or trick that's used that'll help you happily, consciously do that and not have your experience diminished. But it's very rare and very tricky to do.
Yeah, like obviously there's little there's
always exceptions to the rule.
Yeah, and it's done. It's a dangerous game to play with and stuff like that. So let's dive into the comments first before we go into the tricks of the trade and everything. Ethan, hey, how's it going, man? How are you doing? Which goes, Kevin, people screamed thinking they would be hit by a train. This is what we're talking about, essentially.
There you go.
Your brain is actively choosing to ignore the fact that it's being told something. Like when you go into a movie theater, you're told specifically that you're going to watch a movie. It's that everything you're going to see is on a screen or projected. But people, like back then, slightly a little bit easier to suspend your disbelief, because it would have been something you've never seen before. Which breaks on to Patrick's, which was, you said the whole optical illusion thing is your mind choosing not to think about it too much, or essentially drawing the curtain back and letting you think about it. So a lot of that kind of train running towards the track or towards the screen is suspension of disbelief. Just
Yeah,
back then,
and
it was a lot easier.
it's a really interesting comment in the other side of it, because when you think about it, and we've all been in a cinema or watching a movie with somebody sitting beside us, when something happens and somebody will duck or flinch or move just a little bit, and you know they're really into the scene at that point. But at the same point, you know that it is a suspension of disbelief. It's a going with it, because in that same movie, 2 minutes later, when somebody shoots somebody else, they don't go, I have to call the cops, I've just witnessed a murder. So they're in it to the appropriate level. And that's where your brain is going. I'm interpreting all this stuff. I'm letting you enjoy it. I'm going with the real, the not real. We know what we're doing here, but you're going to get more out of this and be more in tune and learn more from the story. That's one of the weird things your brain's trying to do. It's trying to let you learn from what it's seeing. And it would be an impediment to you to not flinch a little bit when the train comes at you, but it would also be an impediment to you to take it too literally, get up and run out of the room and call the cops because there's a loose train, heading down the middle of your street.
Well,
So
like,
yeah,
yeah,
it's an interesting one.
it's the line. It's the line that your brain can essentially determine which side you need to be on at each given moment. Because like I watch a lot of horror films, and I watch a lot of the gory horror films as well. And
He
like
really does, folks. I haven't
if
got the
my
stomach. He does.
if my brain was like, this is all real, like I don't know how. I think I'd be a little bit worse. I feel probably worse than if I know the fact that this is all special effects and everything. If I didn't, there's a different conversation that needs to be had with someone else and straight coats and stuff like
Yeah,
that. If I
yeah,
was just like, yeah, this is fine that someone's getting torn apart. Um. So, Casey,
yeah.
or Kevin, you said that we hit on a point you want to ask about already. Put it
Which
down in the
is,
comments down below.
I
We'll
think it
we'll
might be the
answer it.
next thing he says, though. Fake news, I think maybe is what he's talking about. Yeah, there's that's a whole thing. And you know what? I'm glad I called it out and I'm glad I got it off the board, because we're here to talk movies, and going down that route is a whole other channel. We may we may talk about that someday. But yeah, this is one of those things, like all powerful things in storytelling. If you're good enough at it, it's like a superpower. You can use it for good, you can use it for bad, or basically you can just use it for gain and let the world decide whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I see Ethan's got a big comment that I'm having difficulty. Oh, just while Paul's reading that, any of you that are wondering why I look particularly blue right now, this wasn't on purpose. The color temperature control on my light stopped working just before we started filming. So literally, this is slightly adjusted now. I did look like I was in some sort of weird underwater blue movie a while ago. So yeah. Well,
Um,
did you get to read that comment, Paul?
yeah. So the first part is essentially that he's had people complain about films such as like Harry Potter and Star Wars and stuff like that. That's like and Marvel films that they're not set in real life kind of thing. And it's just like, yes, they aren't. And if you can't enjoy that, then you're going to have a very, like, I guess you're going to have a very difficult time within the media of TV and movies
Well,
kind of thing.
look, my counter to
Um,
that is always the same. It's like, have you ever watched, name a show, and I mean any TV show or any movie, and I'll be like, okay, so you think you're fine with Friends, you're fine with Monica and Rachel being able to afford an apartment on an out of work chef and a waitress salary, and live the life they do, and at no point ever, have any problems. You're suspending an awful lot for everything you watch. Just again, I say you have to be careful where your own prejudices come from, and I'm saying that about myself, because sometimes you don't give things a fair shake just because of their setting, and you go, "Oh no, I couldn't buy into that because it wasn't in the same country as me or on the same planet as me, or did you know the cars flew in that? We don't have flying cars." It's like, yeah, well, we don't have 20 million other things as well that you completely are fine with. So it can be about your own personal choice to get out of things sometimes.
yeah, yeah. Like as you said, you bring baggage into a film, and that can weigh you down in the wrong ways. The other part is that the most unrealistic part of Star Wars is the fact that they all speak English and not the Force, or the fact that Chewie is a walking carpet. Yeah, pretty much. Like
Yeah.
but it's one of those things that it's a bit of familiarity, which is one of the tricks of the trade. Is kind of like, and
Also,
also
most charming walking carpet ever. Like who didn't want that?
Yeah,
Who didn't want that rug as a mate when they were a kid? Like I know I did. I
yeah,
was like, if Chewie came to school with me, nobody would pick on me. But Chewie, he'd be like, "Rrr," and they'd just back right off because he's 9 foot and made out of carpet.
yeah. Like that's the thing. Like we like the Force and Chewie are like one of those things that it's just like they're so blatant that as long as they're fitting within the storylines and concepts of the world, you kind of accept them.
Hmm.
The English part is part of that. It's the familiarity part, which is like you are just like it's like it's good enough in certain elements because I know that Douglas Adams, um, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, they talk about essentially the fish that helps you
The
translate
Babel
things. Like
fish, yeah.
you'll see TV shows and stuff like that. Will like Star Trek and other film and other like TV shows will essentially to explain the reason why everything is in English quickly and easily that you will automatically go cool, got it,
Yeah,
Grant.
I wanted to ask you about that actually, Paul. So, why sci-fi has such a burden of proof with people, and it actually holds up its end way more often than people give it credit for, and that's a great example. Star Trek with the universal translator or whatever it might be. This is how all of these people from different places can speak the same language. Yet, the same people that would complain about, why do people in space speak English? It's like, well, why did Dracula speak English? You watched a movie about a guy from, Transylvania, Romania, Eastern Europe, whatever way you geographically view it, and they spoke English conveniently with an accent to entertain you, and you were fine with it. But no, the fictional Norse god retelling that is Star Wars, yeah, you had a problem with the fact that again, it's what you bring to it, and I've never been able to blame a filmmaker based on something that I brought in. But I have blamed filmmakers on things where they themselves have made the mistake going, I'm like, you know what? It wasn't me this time. It was definitely them. And I think we're going to have fun bringing up
Yeah.
some examples in a while, so I won't spoil it.
Yeah. So like yeah, let's go into some of the tricks of the trade. We'll
Mm.
go into some of the really easy ones first. One of my favorite ones is definitely the narrator. They're the ones who introduce us to the world, which goes
I'm, I'm
as
throwing
a
up
kind of
Michael Caine
guiding
if you
hand.
want.
Yes, Michael Caine. One of the best ways he's a great voice actor, but one of the great moments that he works as a narrator is in The Prestige. He explains the concept of magic in the three parts. Right at the start, she talks about the the buying the bit, the kind of bringing it like what is it showing something normal, showing something absolutely normal and stuff like that, then showing something that they would not believe, and then but the thing is that you need that second part to kind of bring everything back, which is also a good explanation of some of the suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
You once you see the magical thing, if you don't see something return or the kind of the prestige or the kind of result, the middle part doesn't work properly.
Yeah.
You know, um, so the narrator is there to kind of give you a helping hand into the world and stuff. And there's stuff really like Ted even has this, like the comedy movie with
Uh,
Mark Wahlberg and the talking like Teddy. Like plenty of movies have this guiding hand of a voice.
Morgan Freeman's built a small village of mansions out of being the narrator in movies.
That's the thing, and also there's like when Patrick was talking about documentaries will help you do this with the suspension of disbelief with a narrator as well. Like the narrator never go as it starts with documentaries, they never go into just the documentary. They always give you little bits of how the documentary came about and the subject in which they're going to be talking about before they actually start talking about it. They lead you into it.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. That's a good trick. I
They
like
they
I like
set the
that.
table, so that
Yeah.
you know where you're going. Um, now we don't have a huge amount of imagery set up for this, but Paul and I did have a brief discussion, so I grabbed some stuff. As you're talking, Paul, I'm going to try and pick the right image.
Okay.
Apologies out there if I end up screwing Paul over while he's talking about picking the wrong one.
um. So one of the other ones is essentially the protagonist is a avatar for the audience. They are someone who doesn't really know what's going on themselves, kind of thing. For example, you've got Frodo from the Shire. Um,
I guessed right.
he the great thing about Lord of the Rings, and the reason why it is such an easy concept to take on board, is we are essentially given country life, something that we are all familiar with in many reasons, thanks to media as well, and also thanks to friends, family, people we know in our own country, kind of thing. The country life is simple, it's easy, wide, beautiful open spaces and everything like that. But so we accept this small shire area as what it is. Then when Frodo has to leave because of the adventure that he has to go on, he's not knowledgeable about these things. So when he sees the wonders of Rivendell and stuff like that, you are also seeing the wonder yourself. He's helping you along to realize that, like, there are people in this world that also haven't seen these things. So once again, you get this element of familiarity, and you add on to you essentially kind of learn of the world through their eyes, which is another kind of helpful suspension of disbelief. They give you a little bit of familiarity, then toss you into the middle of the thing with a buddy there beside you, going like you're going, oh man, it's such a beautiful place, but like I don't think, and then they go, it's such a beautiful place, but I don't think this is all wonderful magic, and you're just like, oh yeah, no, that's, I was going to say that kind of thing. It's another helping hand kind of element to the suspension of disbelief. Now these are all the kind of, I guess, low hanging fruit ones. These ones also have a large combination of items. The narrator and the kind of avatar of the audience. They have the actor has to be fairly convincing, and they have to fit the role. Which the world has to be nicely set out in many aspects, so that we are eased into the whole concept. Which is the lighting, sound, everything like that has to help us into the roles. So, but in the overall concept, narrator, avatar of the audience are two concepts that are quite easy. The next easy kind of concept is the mini example. Which goes, I'm hoping that you got that right. The mini example. Now this is absolutely famous in sci-fi. This is the one of the key factors to the sci-fi element, and like Back to the Future is one of the best examples of it. Back to the Future has, like, this is the thing. The doc has no reason to do the experiment in full view of the audience for the time machine.
Yeah.
That's for our benefit. It's entirely for our benefit. The small experiment that he does with Einstein is for our benefit. It's not for Marty or anyone. It's explaining the concept. The DeLorean is essentially a time machine, and this device here, the flux capacitor, is essentially what makes it all happen. This is the other part. This is the Deus Ex Machina part of films, which we'll get into another. This is the other concept to it. But if the mini example gives us a smaller scale example of what the concept is going to be. So he shows us the time travel going back 1 minute, showing us the clocks are out of sync by 1 minute. So we accept this. It's just like, okay, well, we've seen the experiment, we've seen it on a smaller scale. So when Marty then goes back to the 1950s, we have accepted the fact that Marty can do this because we've seen a small example. Sci-fi also do this in the simple explanation. Like which Doc does. It's the jumping over the minute. Is how he talks about it. Einstein has jumped over the minute to arrive at their point in time, and that's why his clock is 1 minute slower than, or 1 minute faster.
It's 1 minute
time
out.
machine.
Yeah. 1 minute difference. And kind you know what, Paul? Because like you're nailing that, and I think there's so much about that using that mechanism that gives people the information they need. It's the exposition they need. It gives them character, interest, intrigue. It gives them everything. But again, Back to the Future is such a great example because they also used simple stuff like setting. They set it in. They could have done that, as you say, not in front of the audience or out in a desert away from everybody. But doing it in the Twin Pines Mall car park gives it that air of familiarity. It also then plays later on in the story. Obviously, storytelling is all about the genius of being able to, come back and use previous information, the Chekhov's rifle of it all. But if you can think of Back to the Future, if they had done that in a different location, how much harder it would have been to stay in the film later on, when everything is centered around the town of Hill Valley. It's happening to you, and the reason I'm making this point is it's happening to you as the viewer without you knowing. That's why it's important to know that the idea of suspension of disbelief, it's always talked about as something that's on us as the viewer to give up our inhibitions and just go, right, we're going to take it all in. It's a two-way street. The movie maker, the storyteller, has to make it easy for you and be smart to give you all of the opportunities to stay with them.
Yeah, like that's the thing is that movies give us the tools to do it.
My lights
Did you
are
get a
going nuts.
flicker of the light?
Yeah, sorry. There we go. All lights are broken in this place today. There you go. There's the full blue. I had another light trying to take some of the blue off me. Sorry, Paul. Back to YouTube. Sorry about that.
Which is yeah. So the concept of that miniseries, or sorry, the film gives you all the tools. It gives you everything you need to, or tries to anyway, to give you all the tools that you need to essentially go, okay, brain, get me into the world, kind of thing. Like, it's, so as I said, like that small example in Back to the Future is also accompanied with the audience avatar. Like, that's the whole thing, is Marty doesn't know about this,
Yep.
like, so he is also there as a kind of helping hand, in the sense that he's also finding out all this information for the first time. That's the kind of thing. So, and then there's the simple explanation, which Star Trek does a lot, or a lot of high sci-fi kind of does, which is they're going to fix a problem. They talk about the problem within in their conversational vocations, like, oh, we're going to use quantum physics, and we're going to split the wormhole into, kind of, that's all terrible sci-fi talk. But
yeah, and that idea of using different characters to do exposition when it comes to setting up story, I think Star Trek's a great example, because they have different ranks and different special skills and knowledge. So it's very common to have a 3 or 4 way conversation where each person has to bring their own element, and no room in the history of time has anybody ever done that, where it's like, I know this bit, you know that bit, and we all speak consecutively to explain the whole plan. Not since the A-Team just saying nothing, driving in there and pulling out a welder and knowing exactly what machine they were going to make, has a plan come together quite so sweetly as all of those conversations in sci-fi, where everybody knows just the right part and the right time to say it after each other, to not only explain it to themselves but to you. You got to go with it.
Like, that's the thing. Like, we've like, you have a room full of engineers with the captain and a couple of the officers and stuff. Like, it's weird, the fact that the engineers then explain a concept, look at the captain and the officers, and they're kind of slightly confused, and then going, it's like putting 2 toilet tubes together and then putting water through it, and then just as the water gets to the middle, breaking us apart, kind of thing, like a weird explanation of that kind of, and then you can see the officers going, oh yes, that's actually what would happen. But in Star Trek, it's very much that each one of them will take a part of that explanation and be just like, oh yeah, it's like this kind of thing.
Yeah, and it is great. And I'm going to throw over the comments for a minute, if that's okay with you. I think we should say hey, hi, hello, because I can see there's more streaming in. Nora says Life of Pi is a good movie for this topic. It really, really is. And neither Paul or I didn't have it in my show notes, Paul. I probably should have. But yeah, that's probably the movie we should have just dissected on this. But it really is a good point, that there is storytelling in the book, if you've ever read it, where the author, or in the case of the movie, the director, manages to lay out, well, it's a tough story to sell people and make believable at every turn. But there's a persistence in crafting what you're being shown and crafting what you're being told to allow you to keep your suspension of disbelief, to keep you in the movie or in the story in the case of the book. Kev says the narrator is such a coin flip. I'm not sure I understand that, but maybe
I think it's essentially that the narrator, if done well, is fine, but if done wrong, it's like It is. It is depending on the storyline. Ted does it really well in the sense because it's a fantastical toy that comes to life kind of thing.
Yeah.
Other concepts are kind of like War of the Worlds, like the narrative, like George Freeman is the narrator in that,
Mm.
and is literally the only part of the movie that you are able to probably take in, kind of thing. As in, it's the one with Tom Cruise, the musical and also broadcast and stuff like that. You get why, because it's a news broadcast of
Yeah.
news things, or the musical is essentially just a fun little thing that you willingly accept as a story
Yeah, and
rather than a thing.
I never usually call this out because we both butcher names every episode. But you just said the most adorable thing in the world to me, because now Morgan Freeman is going to be Gordon Freeman to me.
I
And my brain just thought of Morgan Freeman has a brother called Gordon. What's his life like? And does he have a terrible voice? That's a sketch that I really want to
oh,
do. Gordon Freeman, man with the worst voice ever. And
it's
he's like, I hate my brother.
it's because I was playing Half Life like late into the
Oh,
night last
lots
night,
of lots of
and
Gordon.
Gordon
Yeah,
Freeman
I hear you.
is yeah.
I
So
just want to say
Morgan Freeman,
to Kev though, because I laughed when I saw this while you were speaking. It's okay. I blame Paul. That's definitely in reference to my light being completely screwed and no longer changing its color temperature. Paul, if you've been in this house, God damn you for breaking that, but also God damn you for not letting us record in person while you were here. Don't just come and vandalize my stuff. Um, Ethan says Toy Story made me think my pop finals are going to attack me when I'm asleep. Funny, I've got Toy Story down as something I want to talk about in a second. Officially, it's the Lone Pine Mall now. We
yeah.
got some Back to the Future, like it. The narrator is often first part of the movie, so it goes badly. Yeah, you're right. I understand the coin flip now. Sorry, that was me being slow. You're right. But I will say, actually, if you get any of these things wrong, they will do as much harm as they ever would have done good. Um, Battlefield Earth and all sorts of stuff will help show you how to not do things. Actually, there's so many examples of how not to do things.
Especially, that's the weird thing, especially in sci-fi and fantasy, there's quite a lot. It's a minefield for the fantasy and sci-fi worlds, kind of thing. Like,
Mm,
that's the thing. Horror movies, I think, I don't think we ever. I think only found footage ones are the ones that we kind of like accept. We knowingly accept, or not. We don't knowingly accept. I think there's a lot of. I think there's the elements that no, I guess
yeah,
familiarity.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's about setting. In fact, actually, do you mind if I throw you some of my tricks that I think creators can use that we should even be using right now to try and suspend your disbelief? But this is one that we fail at weekly, and we always want to be compelling right from the start. And I've tried to grab a few images for some of this stuff. I chose The Dark Knight, or actually, I can even switch over from The Dark Knight in a minute to 2001. There's no time to argue, and there's no time for your brain to go, this is all fake, if you're actually riveted from the start. That opener in Dark Knight is one of the great opening scenes because it's a bank robbery with a bit of a difference and a little bit of an odd feeling to it. If you kind of take the 2001, ape smashing, learning to use tools, you're intrigued. And your intrigue is such that you're not going, that's a terrible monkey suit. Because trust me, folks, if you watch 2001 enough, at some point you will be so familiar with the story as I am that you're like, God, that's a terrible monkey suit. It's not a good ape in places. Some shots are better than others, but who am I to pick on one of the great films of all time? Then there's I'm throwing over some notes here so I can maybe pull up some right images. Actually, I'm going to throw back to the Future for this one. Details. Build a world, set your scene. Like, that's what you've covered, Paul. And getting the viewer invested. If you can put a character in peril, and particularly characters, if you can get people to care about somebody that you don't need to give a full explanation, and they do that brilliantly with Marty McFly, and even better or more brilliantly, I would say, with Doc Brown, because you have a phone call with Doc Brown at the start of Back to the Future that shows you that kind of paternal kind of uncle vibe, the what we now call the Rick and Morty of it all. but that kind of family unit that they had in a weird way. So by the time they meet and do kind of what you covered, they've already got you invested in those characters a little bit, and they're likable people. Even just on that little bit that you know about them, the rest of it's all intrigue. But this is where Toy Story comes in, and I'm trying to find to click the right thing. I think one of the key things. Now, I'm going to start talking about Toy Story before I say what it is. Toy Story was the first big digital animated movie. That was a tough sell. It's going to be a tough sell to audiences who've never seen it. That you don't just have people going, I'm used to, hand drawn animation or, lithograph, whatever it might be. This is taking me out of it. This is all a bit mad. Familiar surroundings. What's the key thing that they thought of with Toy Story? Toys. They didn't just go, toys are great for selling toys to kids. This wasn't just a merch move. It was a genius move of, yeah, I think we can do a Shrek or, it wasn't them that did Shrek, but we can do our other movies if we kind of go, see all this digital stuff. Well, there's a car, there's a house, there's a child. Here's things at a different scale because these are toys. Here's the label on the toys. Here's, a bed. Here are so many familiar objects in your life that you're able to go, I had one of those, or, that's the kind of car that, my parents had when I was a kid, whatever it might be. So Toy Story, I think, is a particular bit of genius in allowing people to just go with it. Just get right in there and go with it.
Yeah, it plays on the familiarity, familiarity scale of things. The little toy soldiers, the building blocks, phone, even the Fisher Price phone stuff.
Yeah.
All of that is all built into the familiarity part.
And
it's so close to what you know, it's a fairly easy sell.
yeah, and if they'd tried to do something more ambitious I say more ambitious, it was pretty ambitious to do Toy Story, but if they tried to go for something just much more fantastical, people would be referring it to now as that animated cartoon, not the start of, digital animated movies. It was genius in a lot of ways. The next thing I'm throwing up is something you touched on. Have people act in a believable way. If you have people act, and when I say in a believable way, I don't mean for you or for me or for Paul, a believable way for the character that you've been introduced to. And my perfect example of this that gets overlooked all the time is Bill Paxman, Hudson, in Aliens. His story arc, as short as it might be, he's introduced as, a space grunt, kind of real, jock, a little bit douchey, all those things. But by the time he utters the immortal, game over, man, game over, you're with him and you're able to accept all his changes in character and his ascendancy to, redemption as an obviously a nice guy underneath it all. He can do anything while there's an alien running around and there's an android piloting a remote dropship. I can go full sci-fi on this and really try and put people off. But you have characters like him acting the way you feel that they would act. It keeps you there. So no matter how many aliens are popping out of the walls that you've, I don't believe aliens exist. Fine. It's people like him and Sigourney Weaver, the characters Ripley that they're playing are consistent in a fantastical and very surreal situation. But if they had gone completely off the rails and he'd started, waka waka wakaing at some point to be comic relief, just comic relief, it would have thrown everybody out of the movie. You would have fallen out of the same speed as the movie was moving.
Well, the Hudson thing is also we can update that a little bit in which is the Ron Weasley from Harry Potter. Like he goes through a lot, like throughout the books he goes through a lot of kind of like growing and everything like that but he continues to be slightly kind of like until the later films a scaredy cat, and it's a good contrast because like not every character is going to be like Hudson is a guy as well, and Ron Weasley is a person like Hudson is all macho, all talk, and then when everything doesn't go their way, he's automatically just like the guy who complains about everything and kind of thing. That these personalities exist. You've probably come across them in many different ways, but that kind of personality enclosed into the worlds that you're watching is what allows you. It's another layer of kind of like familiarity. But as you said, because of the world's kind of like physics,
Mm.
like or kind of laws, like you're anyone is able to do whatever they need to or anything like that, that they react to the thing and kind of play within their group. Because like it's interesting to see the three, like the loads of the characters you see. Sigourney Weaver's, she like Ripley is just constantly, she hates these things. They killed her crew. She like has nightmares about these things. You've got Hicks, who's just a soldier, like just down about soldier. Like, and then you got Hudson, who's like, literally that guy who's, boisterous and whiny and stuff
He's
like that.
covering, and the great thing about, and that's why I think he's a character that always, I think he deserves his own episode, Paul, between us. He is the epitome of bravado hiding fear, and that's before there was anything to be afraid of. So his then uh, becoming a big whiny scaredy cat once there was something to fear was just so natural, because those people who are, they're overcompensating for the fact that they're afraid. They're afraid they won't fit in. They're afraid the other guys in their army unit don't think they're tough enough, so they're extra braggy about it. Then when the brown hits the fan, they're the ones like, what the hell, man? Because fear was there all along. And that's why his nice transition is believable, because it takes time and it's done in stages and it's done with coaching from the ultimate soldier, the inspirational badass that is Ripley. So it's, yeah, like, again, by the way, just in case anybody's wondering, Alien's perfect movie. I'll fight you. Yeah, Paul, before I move on to my last little trick that people use, thank you for updating, because like I pick older references and you're very good at going, here's a more modern one. But if we're ever on air together and you compare Hudson to Ron Weasley, I may just cut the stream.
Oh no, I
I
wasn't.
know, I'm joking.
Oh, that's not. We both think that Aliens is a perfect film.
No,
The
I
only
know
reason
that.
I pick Ron Weasley
Yeah.
is the knowledge of, like,
Oh, I'm
Kevin
completely on
also
the
says
wind up
this.
there, my friend. Completely on the wind
Oh
up
well,
door.
no, this is the great thing. Kevin also pointed out. He
Oh,
says in Ron's defense, he was brought up in the Wizarding World, so he knows what to fear more.
ooh,
And you're just like, yes, but he also uses that knowledge to kind of lord it over Harry at the first couple of films. But what the fantastic thing that we're currently doing is, none of us have gone, the reason that Ron Weasley is scary or scared or is a scaredy cat is because that's what the character needed to be.
yeah,
None of us are doing it. Everybody is talking about his relationship with the world, his how he was brought up and
exactly.
everything like that. None of
Because
us are talking about,
we have willingly suspended our disbelief. We've bought into the character, and that's the art of it all.
like, you were literally explaining to me why a character in a world that none of us exist in would be scared. It's a perfect roundabout way that none of us are going, yeah, Ron Weasley's just scared because that's what the character was required to have. It needs to be the counterweight to the Harry Potter character, who you were saying is slightly ignorant of the world, and that's why he's brave. And
Well,
it's just like,
we now get to that point, Paul, where I get to pay off something I said earlier on. Remember, I said there was one exception to the idea that you've got to have following all the rules is a good idea, but the one reason or one time to break them, and it's usually for artistic choice, but it will work to keep people in, even though you're knowingly telling them to get out but come back in again, and that is caricature and emotional exaggeration. I am going to pick Starship Troopers. I think I have RoboCop here as well, but I'm going to go with the Starship Troopers. Starship Troopers is a perfect example of, we're going to take you on a ride. We're going to try and give you some subliminal, social and cultural messages here. There's going to be some commentary, but on the face of it, we want you to get on board with something fantastical that we're going to play off a little bit stupid in places. We're going to do all sorts of things in the next while. So we're coming out of the gate hard, making you feel, hang on, are they trying to make me just think of this as a movie? Because it's a little bit, it's not doing any of the things that we've talked about. It doesn't necessarily do the whole kind of let's bring you in and make these characters believable in the conventional sense. It uses kind of caricature and emotional exaggeration. And even sometimes I think the casting was genius for some wooden acting. I actually think, and this is terrible because I hope none of those actors are thinking, is it me they're talking about? That's why I'm not naming any of you. I think some of you are cast because you are going to be able to pull off a little bit wooden, and not be brilliant, and maybe take people out of it just enough that they're going to come back in and go, yeah, but I want to watch this fun thing. The journey you were taking them on was literally a roller coaster. Whereas what we've been talking about is people taking you on a cross-country trip, an adventure in that sense. So I think that's a funny one, and there are loads of really good examples where skillful storytellers and directors and actors and all the all the cast and crew that make a movie happen, if they're all on the understanding that what we're doing here is that, it works brilliantly. If they're not, it can actually just turn out to be real bad. It's one of those, either you get it right or you just made a really terrible movie.
Yeah, like that's the thing, because like I will consistently suspend my disbelief in the sense that I will actively go, okay, I don't think that'll happen, but let's buy the bit and keep going, kind of thing. Like, and I automatically downgrade the film, like unless they do it as you say skillfully in the sense that this is part of it.
Yeah.
This is the parody of it, or something like that.
You're
It's
welcome to our style or our aesthetic or whatever it might be.
yeah, like that's the thing. Like that's the like I guess parody would be one of the bigger ones as well, in the sense that we are all understanding the subject matter that they are discussing in the way that they're discussing it.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Like comedy parodies, like Vice, like the whole thing about the vice presidents of George Bush and stuff like that. It's not a comedy or anything like that, on the kind of upper level of things. But like you can definitely find it interesting and parody of the character and stuff like that in certain ways. It's not it is a storytelling of the vice president of the Bush administration, but it's doing it in such a way that you know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
thing. There's never a willing suspension of disbelief, but it's part of the whole story, because like they have graphs and like explanations of hierarchy with that Vice did and stuff like that. So it's explaining things, which is the same thing as I also find with Starship Troopers. Not comparing them or anything, but Starship Troopers does an interesting thing, which is it also makes you feel like you're watching, like you're watching in between the propaganda.
Yeah. Yeah. The would you
Kind
like to
of
know
thing with the
more
whole
breaks, which are great. Yeah.
yeah, which is like it's their way of introducing the world in a bigger sense, kind of thing, but allowing you to see the story that they want to tell, kind of thing. So like what the propaganda parts of that movie does is it it makes you aware of the fact that you could be watching, like you're aware of watching a movie because the parody or the propaganda parts are making it very obvious,
Well,
kind of thing.
I'm conscious of time, and there's a couple of things I really want to get through with you because I want to hear your thoughts on them. So we might do a quick fire round in a second. But I just want to say, before anybody says it in the comments, don't mention fourth wall breaking, because we're going to do a whole separate episode about that. That is a much deeper and more complex conversation in relation to the idea of an audience knowing they're watching something, and it's fascinating. So when we do that episode, be sure to tune in. Paul, good examples and bad examples. Should we finish out with that? I want to run through a real quick list, and let's just do the first couple of things that you need to suspend your disbelief about classics such as Gremlins. So I'm just going to throw these up. Gremlins, for me, it's really simple. It's not that anything can't eat after midnight or any of that stuff. It's quite simply that someone goes, there's a creature I've never heard of on the planet ever, and I'm completely chill with it. Can you imagine the concept of, hey, look, I brought home a new species of animal no one's ever heard of? That's incredible. But how did they do that? They did it very well, because Gizmo was cute as a button. And let's face it, Gizmo forever, Baby Yoda second place. Yeah, but, Gremlins, a classic, you go with it.
Yeah, like that's the other really nice thing about that is it also sets up the rules first of all. Like
Mm,
you get the don't feed it after midnight, don't get it wet, don't get it in direct sunlight. You get the rules, and then they break, and then you see the consequences of those rules being broken. So it's nice.
that's it.
It's a
And
nice one.
next classic, Die Hard. People are always thinking it's just superhero movies and space movies that you need to suspend your disbelief. I say it's even harder sometimes when you see people making unrealistic Tom Cruise jumps, Although Tom tends to do it in real life, which is kind of contradicting. I shouldn't have chosen him. Bruce Willis, Die Hard. If I was going to pick one thing, it's him shuffling through the air vent system with the lighter lit up. You have to completely get over the fact that he's too well lit for just that lighter to be the only light source. But for me, it was always, how is that air vent not falling down? He's a fairly muscly dude. I worked in construction now and again as a younger fella. Those things aren't bolted up that well. So yeah, the line would have gone, come into the coast, have a few, as the whole thing crashes down. Die Hard, well, so much to choose that you have to suspend, but it's just so well done.
Well, that opens the doors to action movies themselves. Like, that one person can do all that with that amount of damage, they tend to get, kind of thing. Like that's the other disbelief kind of thing. So
I've only got two more, and we gotta do them quick. So I'm just gonna throw up Jaws and say, Rubber Shark. There you go. Again, the glory of brilliant filmmaking. And then my favorite, the last one, Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters. They use everything in the arsenal to keep you there, including just dollops and dollops of charm. But it doesn't matter in the case of Ghostbusters whether or not you're taken out and you feel you're watching a movie at one or 2 points in it, because it's such a good movie at bringing you back in. It's one of those masterpieces of consistently remembering that they're telling a story that could easily lose you the way they're telling it. It's a hard-working movie. It seems like it's all effortless, but it's actually working hard in the first act, the second act, and the third act to keep you on the train of, guess what we're going to do next? It's going to be a 5-story tall Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Yeah, actually, I was going to use Ghostbusters as one of my other examples. That's the interesting thing. Because they introduced two concepts really well, which is the first one, they introduce you to the concept of ghosts really well by having the library scene, and then the second one is the concept that they can catch ghosts. And like those two ways, like they're all terrified of the ghosts at the start, kind of thing, and they're also in wonder about it. And then the second part is them catching us, where they absolutely destroy the hotel room. They but they're all absolutely, it's like adrenaline rush fascination of catching the ghosts.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass. And weirdly, Paul, exactly. In that very same movie, one of the things that the plot spends more time convincing you is okay, and this is so weird when you think about it, it's the fact that they have nuclear proton accelerator packs on their back, to the point that you have the EPA coming and talking to them about unregulated storage and the nuclear, the small nuclear bombs that they have in their back. Like, the effort in that movie to legitimize some things, not unnecessarily. They necessarily do it for entertainment and story, but it has the side benefit of, and see, we're actually fleshing out this world to keep you in it. Ghostbusters classic.
Well, that's the good thing, because in the second one they also talk about, because they bring in the fact that they've literally got a nuclear battery on their backs, and then in the second one they explain again that they're just like, I hope this equipment works. And it's like, they should. The cells have a half-life of 4,000 years.
Yeah,
you're just like, oh,
yeah, that's not good. You know what? Because we're very much running on time, I just want to give us a chance to give some of the good examples of bad examples. So here's a few things really quickly that I think kick you out of movies. Not getting your facts straight. If you, in the entire movie, if you do everything perfectly, but you keep saying that Paris is the capital of Ireland, that's going to knock a lot of people out, particularly Irish people and probably French people. Cliches. Cliches are great. They're great for shorthand and for fun and laughing at. But if you do evil twins on your TV show, how many times has there been an evil twin storyline in a soap opera or that kind of genre of stuff? It will be people going, oh, they're doing the evil twin thing. Or, for the likes of us, it's there was a backdoor password. Or I'm going to hack into the Pentagon and it's 3 keystrokes later, because it's such a cliche of stuff showing on screen that isn't even, typing. It's like there are shapes showing while the guy's typing and he's hacked into the Pentagon. So cliches are a bit of a rough one. My two most favourite examples before I throw it up to you for you then is Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 3, the spider dance kind of strutting down the street thing. What, you already had people going with Spider-Man at that point. You'd brought people a long way to do something so ridiculous that it even pumped people off the edge of that rail to kind of go, oh, we can't stay on this train anymore. But my favorite, and the one I want to leave you on, Paul, Interstellar. Love is the fourth dimension is the worst thing that you could possibly have done to me to kick me out of a movie I was absolutely loving. The idea that you're essentially in a tesseract situation. You're there, and you then proclaim it's love. Love was no, it isn't. You spent an entire movie being very interestingly scientifically compelling, and then you just scream Murph-a-load, say love, and I kind of go, oh, that would have been a great movie if you hadn't ruined it.
Yeah, yeah. The concept that love transects time and space, and
Oh yeah, that's the
death and
fourth
everything like
dimension. All
this.
right, yeah, okay, sure it is.
Yeah.
I am a romantic at
Um.
heart, folks. Just not for Interstellar's ending.
Yeah, like that's. I can tell you that that's a that's a bad one sometimes. Especially when people also like say that you don't. You probably want to understand the movie, and you're sitting there going like, "Oh, I understood it perfectly," just not a bit happy about it.
Exactly,
Um,
exactly. So yeah, have you got any kind of this has pumped you out of a movie, or things that people do that really derail?
I guess it's the position of power and the stupidity thing. If you don't sell it well, we talked about it at the start. Alien Covenant, like
Oh
the decision to go down to the planet. It's the key factor for me that to go down to the planet for the first, like they try to sell us as the person who essentially has the call as the new captain. They're not very experienced. They have all these kind of confident issues and everything like that, and they're doing it in the sense that they think it's a good idea, but everybody's against them, and kind of thing. That single decision is the whole reason that the movie exists. And if you can't sell me on that reason, then I'm done.
then you're
Like
done.
I now have to actively choose to believe that this is like, to go down to the planet. Like, because they're like, we've never surveyed this planet, but it's closer. And you're just like, no, that's not a reason. The reason you would have been picked for this job is because that you're actually good at your job. Like you're not being a colony pilot like group,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
I
Um,
think, Paul, anybody who's watching, rewind back the video, it's very clear that I absolutely love Aliens, and most of the Alien franchise can't stand Promethean, well, Promethean I really can't stand. Covenant I have issues with.
yeah,
So,
see, that's the thing.
there's, in that movie franchise alone, you've got good examples, brilliant examples, and then bad examples and terrible examples of,
Yeah.
of what we're talking about. So, yeah, it's a funny little nice circle point to come back to.
The other ones that I can't really stand is the ones that sometimes gets me annoyed is the Deus Ex Machina thing, which we didn't actually go back to, but we will maybe in another
Mm.
video. So if you guys are really liking these videos about suspension of disbelief, we'll be happy to do a deeper dive into the concept and the more kind of maybe even the more psychological parts of what, like, the things that we can't really explain here. Which is so yeah. Let us know. Let us know in the comments down below or in the chat and stuff like that. Tweet us at social
Yeah.
medias and stuff like that to tell us if you want to do further. But the Deus Ex Machina thing, there's like there's some Deus Ex Machina tools that just don't sit well with me. The flux capacitor is a good example of it. Not is a good example of it being used well.
Mm.
They don't talk about it too much. Like it's they don't talk about the inner workings. They
Yeah.
just go, this is the reason why time travel exists. That's it.
If
you know
anything, they only ever talk about it because they want to give it power. They don't talk about the toy. They talk about the battery that goes in it. Um, yeah, that's weird when you
yeah.
actually think about it that way.
So but in Looper they tell you not to think about it. They actively go, don't think about time travel, because the more you think about it, the worse it'll get. And you're just like, you're telling me to do something you're telling me to essentially suspend my disbelief of a concept that you are now currently working around. So like I get that that time travel is the Deus Ex Machina like part to you, but you have given me no explanation and then told me not to wonder about it.
Mm.
So like you're forcing me now to think about it and stuff like that. Like, if you know that kind of way where
I
it's
hate
like,
it when
don't
at the
think
end
of
of a
the.
video you bring up something that I want to talk about at length. And actually, I better on that note because we are really running long. We better kind of throw it out to the people, as you were saying. Get in the comments down below. Let us know if you're enjoying this stuff. Our live streams are a lot longer than our records. That's because we get to do this. We get to ramble on. We get to talk to you lovely people. And speaking of those lovely people, we have a few comments just to round it out. Terrific film, pure entertainment. That could have been for Jaws, Ghostbusters, or Gremlins, I think, at this stage. Terrific film. Never seen a rubber shark. Jaws is a masterpiece. Dollops of marshmallow and slime mellows. I am definitely hungry now. Thank you both for commenting to each other and basically generating my hunger because it's definitely time to eat. Casey Wonder Kev says hacking in pretty much any movie. Yeah, it's become a cliche, actually, the idea of hacking here as well, just not to say it and say we got in and got the stuff. To all the people who commented tonight, Ethan, Brew, Nora, Kev, everybody, thank you all. To all our new subscribers and to anybody watching us for the first time, we hope you enjoyed this. We do all sorts of random stuff. And we always at the end ask you to leave a comment down below based on something. So I would like to ask the question, Paul, if this is the question that you agree with, how about you all tell us what's the one thing that's pulled you out of a movie? Give us an example of the movie or the thing that somebody did badly. It could have been that somebody's accent was just so bad you couldn't believe the character was from a place. Looking at you, Richard Gere, in Jackal or whatever that was.
I thought you were going to say Richard Gere and Jackal is married, but I thought you were going to play the poker one. What's this?
Oh, Rounders. No, I
Yeah.
love John Malkovich's
But John
put the money
Malkovich
on
is
the
Russian.
table, whatever he was trying to do there. That's
Chick, chick,
artistic
chick, chick,
choice.
chick.
He can do anything he wants. He's John Malkovich. Damn it.
Yeah.
So like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. You folks have been great at sharing. And again, I even saw on Twitter people passing us out and recommending to their friends. We hope that we're worthy of your recommendations. Give us any feedback on how we can be better. Tell us where we were worse. And we'll keep trying to increase our worthiness of your time.
So, which is, yeah, on that note, thanks very much for watching. As you said, also comment down below the film that took you out of, or the moment that took you out of the thing, and also if you would like to see us deeper dive into this subject.
Yep.
Me and Patrick love this subject.
Yeah.
It is like one of the biggest foundations of the entertainment industry. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. I've been Paul.
And I've been Patrick.
And we've been here as out. Now for the arbitrary me waving a lot until
well, I hit end stream.
Doesn't tell me that he's actually cancelled.
No, I really haven't hit it this time. Bye, everybody. Bye from Blue Light.